It wasn't a great argument or years of hatred that broke a family apart. Sometimes, tragedy begins with something colder: the quiet precision of numbers, the chill of an autopay account. Emily Carter, the daughter who spent her youth and her savings paying every bill in the name of love, finally realizes she has been erased, her name deleted from the family table with a single click. A short, icy message becomes the spark for her reckoning. Determined to reclaim what was taken, Emily vows to return every cent, every transaction that bound her to people who once called her family. In the end, she will recover the most valuable thing of all, the steep price of betrayal, and herself, from the ruins of a family long gone cold.
Before we begin this story, let me know where you are listening from in the comments below.
My name is Emily Carter. I'm 27 years old. And what I'm about to tell you today will forever change the way you see your own family. I still remember that night clearly. So quiet I could hear the wall clock ticking, second by second. The dim yellow light spilled across the small kitchen, glinting off the worn wooden table where I'd laid out the stack of freshly paid bills. Every night, after washing the only ceramic cup I owned and wiping the table dry, I would sit down with my laptop and open the autopay spreadsheet. The numbers lined up neatly, cold, mechanical, like the heart monitor of someone who'd stopped caring about life. I didn't do it just to keep things under control. I did it out of guilt. A part of me believed that if I made sure everyone around me lacked for nothing, then maybe, just maybe, they would look down on me a little less. It was the punishment I gave myself, a way to exist without daring to ask for affection. Electric bill, $148. Internet, $89. Aunt Darlene's gas card, $62. I read them out loud as if reciting a prayer. No one heard. Just me and the old laptop, its white screen shining on the fine lines around my eyes. I once thought responsibility was what made me worthy of love. Now, looking back, maybe it only made me look like an ATM that could smile. When the clock struck 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed once. I thought it was a bank email or an automatic billing alert, but when I opened it, the words were clear. "You're banned from Thanksgiving, idiot." A simple line, yet it hit like a stone dropped into a still pond. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shocked. Just cold. A chill spreading from my chest, as if I'd just been released from a suffocating room I hadn't realized was locked. I stared at the message until the phone screen went black. My reflection looked back. Faint. Lost. I didn't need to reread it to know who sent it. Even though the text came from my mother's number, I could hear Lucas's voice. My brother. Woven between the words. He had a habit of using Mom's phone to say what she never dared to. I was supposed to feel hurt, wasn't I? But instead, I felt free. A cold, translucent kind of freedom, like slipping off a shackle I'd worn so long I'd forgotten it was there. Finally, I thought, I don't have to pretend anymore. No more pretending that sending money was love. No more pretending that enduring silence was sacrifice. No more pretending they needed me out of affection. And not because my debit card still worked. I set my phone down and took a deep breath. The tea in my cup had gone cold, its surface reflecting the light above. I tried to remember the last time someone thanked me. Maybe 2016, when I helped Dad pay his $6,000 hospital bill. They never said thank you. They just said, "Good thing we have you." And 3 days later, they'd forgotten. My laptop chimed, a bank notification for an automatic payment. I laughed, quietly but bitterly. This system, I built it to help my family, yet it had become my own chain. I opened the spreadsheet, autopay, family accounts. 6 accounts, all linked to my card. Electricity, mother, internet, home Wi-Fi, gas card, Darlene, insurance, Lucas, cell phones, family shared plan, utilities, Carter residence. I looked at those lines as if staring at a map of my own endurance. A voice in my head whispered, "If they can ban you from Thanksgiving, they can live without your money." I didn't tremble. I just felt startlingly clear. The cursor hovered over Remove Card. My hand froze for a moment. Then came the familiar voice. The old Emily. "What if they need you? What if they can't manage without you?" And another voice, new, colder, replied, "They already said it. You're just a credit limit idiot." I clicked. A soft click, barely audible, yet in my mind something cracked. A part of me broke. Another part was set free. I sat still. No tears, no sighs. Everything was silent. Only the ticking clock continued, counting down to the moment I'd finish what I started. I opened the next account, then the next, then all of them. Each click was a small, clean cut, severing one more thread between me and them. Not out of hatred, but out of survival. I realized I was never angry at them for using me. I was angry at myself for turning into the safety net no one asked whether I wanted to be, even as it stretched me thin. When the last account was deleted, the kitchen fell into silence. The kettle clicked off softly, like the snap of a violin string. Normally, that was my cue to pour more hot water. But tonight, it felt like the end signal. I turned off the light, letting the darkness swallow everything. And in that darkness, for the first time in years, I felt my heart beating again, not out of anxiety, but peace. I was no longer Carter family expenses. I was no longer the responsible one. I was simply Emily, a woman who had just found her own breath again. Freedom isn't shouting. It isn't revenge. Sometimes it's just a single click, and the silence that follows. The morning after that message, I woke up earlier than usual. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, drawing golden streaks across the wooden table where my laptop still sat open on the auto-pay sheet. Beside it was a cold cup of tea, a thin film on its surface like a layer of time's dust. I took a deep breath and reopened the tabs. The familiar lines stood neatly in place. Electricity, Carter residence internet, home Wi-Fi phones, family shared plan insurance, Lucas gas card, Darlene other utilities, water, trash, heating. These lines looked like work, but in truth, they were the history of a love gone wrong. I scanned the columns: due date, amount, auto debit, status. The analyst part of my brain began to run automatically. Average monthly spending, seasonal fluctuations, late payment risks, contingency scenarios. Everything logical, tidy. Except in the beneficiary column, there was no name that read Emily. Old memories bubbled up like air from deep water. Dad's $6,000 hospital bill. The garage smelled of oil. He collapsed near his toolbox. Mom panicked, and I drove him to the ER. When the nurse brought over the payment form, Mom didn't look at me. She looked straight at the paper. "You'll cover this, right?" "No, please. No, thank you." Just a soft command. I transferred the money. 3 weeks later, Dad recovered. The family celebrated with fried chicken. No one mentioned the $6,000 again. The bill disappeared as if it had never existed. But I lost another piece of innocence. I know exactly when I became the safety net. Not a bang, but a faint ding when I added my card under primary payment. From then on, their problems slid across me like rain on a raincoat. Wet, cold, but invisible from the outside. Each month, I patched one hole, then another, and another. No one ever asked if the fabric could still hold. Late that morning, Lucas texted, "Mom says to remind you about the internet bill. It's due today." I stared at the message and counted my heartbeat. People can talk all their lives and never actually communicate. To them, I was a function. Pay. Things work. Silence. I typed 3 words. Not this month. Set the phone down. The room suddenly felt half a meter wider. In another file, I tried a strange exercise. A report about myself. Visible assets, skills, steady income, clean credit history, invisible debts, need for validation, fear of abandonment, habit of enduring. Key risks: being defaulted responsible, emotional exhaustion, passive complicity in unfairness, early warning signs, one-word texts, jokes that sting, family dinners where I'm the last to sit down. I looked at that chart and had to laugh. I could dissect every client's risk model, yet never defined my greatest risk: me. I had chosen family over self like a too-big-to-fail strategy. The problem was, the more I rescued them, the more they believed collapse was impossible. At noon, Mom called. The ringtone rang for a while before I answered. She asked one thing: "What about the car insurance this month?" Her voice calm, as if asking about the weather. I heard myself reply, "Mom, I've removed my card. From now on, everyone handles their own." There was a pause, then a faint sigh. The kind of sound I'd spent my whole youth trying to silence with money. The call ended with, "It's up to you." I stared at the dark screen and saw the reflection of a woman learning to set boundaries. Late, but not too late. In the afternoon, I opened my transaction history. Scrolling back through years revealed a map of exhaustion, the family plan phone bill climbing with every new device, Aunt Darlene's gas card swelling each holiday season, the internet upgraded for Lucas's sports streaming, the electricity spiking every winter for heating. The numbers made sense. The nonsense was me. Every line item marked a moment I told myself, just this once. But just this once had multiplied into a system. That evening, I came home early and replaced the kitchen light bulb, the one that had been out for 3 days while I ignored it. When the light came on, I suddenly understood. I'd cared for them so much that I'd forgotten my own light. I cooked a simple bowl of noodles, sprinkled some pepper, and ate slowly. There was no clatter of dishes from a crowded house, no criticism for moving too slowly. Just the sound of my spoon touching the bowl and my own steady breathing. When night fell, I spread the bills out again, not to pay them, but to face them. On the back of each, I wrote a line. The first time I replaced myself with a function. The time I smiled to dodge pain. The time I believed being useful, being loved. I gathered them into one envelope, sealed it, and labeled it, "The Things They Don't See." Before bed, I sent a short email to the whole family. Starting this month, I won't manage the payments anymore. Everyone needs to set up their own methods. I'm still here if anyone wants to really talk. I pressed send. No explanations. No resentment. Just a small invitation to conversation. The rarest thing in the Carter household. Lying down, I felt my heartbeat steady. I wasn't happy yet. But the old fear of being called ungrateful, selfish, began to fade. I understood then. The heaviest invisible burden isn't money, it's having to play the responsible one just to be allowed to exist. When I took off that role, the world didn't collapse. It simply made room for me to stand upright. Before I drifted to sleep, I whispered to myself a quiet affirmation. I'm no longer the safety net. I am a person. And in the dark, that sentence felt like a soft blanket, enough to keep me warm through the night, and strong enough to face tomorrow. Tuesday evening, after work ended, I opened my phone just to check the weather. But old habits made my fingers swipe to the Messages tab, where the icon for Carter Family Chat sat pinned at the top. I couldn't remember the last time I opened that group, probably sometime over the summer when I was still helping them pay the electricity bill. The latest notification read, "Thanksgiving seating chart," sent by Mom. I tapped on it. A blurry photo appeared. A sheet of grid paper on the dining table, names written neatly in black marker. Dad at the head, Mom beside him, then Lucas and his wife, Amy. Aunt Darlene, Uncle Barry, the two little nieces. Each name carefully placed. I scanned the whole thing. Then again. My name wasn't anywhere. I zoomed in, tracing each corner, every slanted line of handwriting. No Emily. Not a single mark showing I had ever existed in that space. The first feeling wasn't pain, but dizziness. Like standing in an old room and realizing every familiar object had been replaced, leaving only the hollow where you used to be. I scrolled down to the comments. Save me the gravy spot. Lucas always near the turkey, classic. Can't wait to see everyone. Laughter, emojis, cheerful banter, all familiar. Only one difference, no one mentioned me. I scrolled up to the older messages. The last thing I'd sent was on July 18th. Paid the electricity bill. Done. No one replied. 4 months of absolute silence after that. Until today, when they planned Thanksgiving as if I'd never been part of it. I let out a small laugh. Soundless, stiff. The emptiness crept in like night air, not sharp, but enough to make me shiver. I didn't feel anger or heartbreak, just the blunt truth laid bare, that sometimes people don't need to throw you out of the house. They just need to stop mentioning you. I sent a private message to Mom. I saw the seating chart. Why isn't my name there? The message turned blue, cold. I waited. Not to be invited, but to see if she cared enough to explain. 5 minutes, 10, 20. The phone buzzed. Not Mom. Lucas. We're tight on space. Be good and maybe Christmas. I stared at the message, like being slapped, not hard, but enough to wake me up. Be good. 2 short words, holding a lifetime of disdain. I wasn't a sister anymore. I was a child who had to behave to earn a seat at the table. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled further up through the chat history. Old messages surfaced like ghosts. Emily, pay the gas, okay? Hey, phone bill's late. Mom needs the insurance handled. No thank yous. No, how are you? Just commands, dressed in familiarity. I locked the screen and leaned back in my chair. Outside, the late sunlight slid across the window. Dry leaves brushed together, sounding like paper being torn. That's when I realized I hadn't just been excluded from dinner. I'd been excluded from the idea of family long ago. They were only just saying it out loud now. Thanksgiving memories came rushing back. I used to cook nearly every dish. I made the shopping list, ordered the pumpkin pie, arranged the flowers, chose the tablecloth. Last year, I even paid for the gas so they could use the oven. While everyone ate, I cleaned. While everyone laughed, I sliced the pie. When they took pictures, I stood off to the side, tilting my body to make the shot look better for them. In that photo, my face was blurred by the light. Looking back, maybe that was the first sign of my erasure. I got up and opened the cabinet where I kept the old photo box. In every picture, I was either the last to smile or the one holding the pan. In every frame, I was serving. People never hate the one who serves them. They just forget she exists. My phone lit up. A new message. From Mom. Don't make this a big deal, sweetheart. It's just dinner. Don't overthink it. I read it over and over, each word adding another layer of cold. Just dinner. But to me, it was a place in their world. A chair, a spot in the photo, an invitation. Small things I once took for granted, now revealed as privileges. I typed back, I'm not angry, Mom. I just want to know. Has your love ever existed without convenience? The typing. Bubble appeared, then disappeared. No reply. I set the phone down on the table. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. I sat still. Part of me wanted to cry, but another part felt strangely calm, as if the worst had already happened and I was still standing. I stepped out onto the balcony. The late autumn sky was washed in pale orange. Leaves covered the rooftops across the street. Light reflected off the windows, making the whole world look as though it was cooling down. I imagined the upcoming Thanksgiving dinner, the smell of turkey, the clinking of cutlery, the laughter. And there, at the corner of the table, the seat I'd had last year would be empty. In my mind, a small sign sat on it, written in black ink. "This seat is paid for." I smiled, a quiet smile, small enough that only I knew it happened. They might forget me in the photo, but they'll never forget that everything once worked because of me, and I finally understood. No seat at any table is worth more than standing in your own place. After Lucas's "be good" message, I tried to stay silent, but silence has limits. By the third day, when the family group chat was still buzzing about side dishes and parking spots, I knew I couldn't just sit and watch anymore. I wanted to hear my mother's voice, not to plead, but to see if she still recognized me as her daughter. I pressed call. The phone rang 4 times, 5, then a click, and Mom's voice came through, hurried. "Hello? Emily? I'm really busy right now." "What is it, honey?" In the background, clinking dishes, music, and then Uncle Barry's loud, teasing voice. "Hey everyone, it's the budget police." Laughter erupted, chaotic and long. I held my breath. I was used to them joking about my need to keep finances in order, but this time it sounded different. Like I was an outsider overhearing strangers imitate me. "Uncle Barry, stop!" My mother laughed, not annoyed at all. I could hear wine being poured, a chair sliding. Someone asked, "Who's that?" She answered casually, "Emily. Calling again about money, probably." I bit my lip. No, I hadn't called about money. I called for one reason only, to see if she could still hear me. "I just wanted to ask about Thanksgiving," I said slowly, keeping my tone steady. "My name's not on the list." "Mom, did you really not invite me?" A sigh on the other end. "Oh, Emily, why do you always have to make things so heavy? It's just dinner." "To you, maybe, but to me, it's family." A brief pause. I could hear glasses clinking again, the chatter resuming behind her. Then her voice came back, cooler. "You always overreact. No one means anything by it. But you know how everyone is. If you come, it'll turn into a thing. Let's just skip it this time, okay? Don't make yourself miserable. Don't make yourself miserable." I repeated the phrase in my head. What if they knew they were the misery? What if they understood I never wanted anything more than a simple invitation? I drew in a deep breath, forcing myself to speak slowly, otherwise I'd cry. "Mom, I'm not asking for much. I just need to understand. If I'm not family enough to have a seat at dinner, then I'm not family enough to pay the bills either. Is that it?" Silence. I heard her set a glass down, a chair creaking. "What kind of talk is that? How can you threaten us with money? We're family." I let out a faint laugh. "Family? Families don't ban you from Thanksgiving just because you stopped being their wallet." Mom's tone snapped, rising with real anger. "That's enough! You think money makes you better than everyone? We've all had to endure you for years. You always have to be the victim." I went still. In my head, the memories reeled by like fast-forwarded film. Me filling out Dad's insurance forms, me paying the electric bill at midnight, me answering Lucas's calls when his gas card maxed out, me hearing Mom sigh, "You're the only one I can count on." I used to think that was love. Now I knew. It was dependency. I spoke quietly, each word heavy as stone. If I'm not family enough for a seat at the table, then I'm not family enough to pay for it either, Mom. A sharp breath on the other end. Then click. The call ended. I stared at the screen. 1 minute, 2. Then the phone lit up. A new message from Mom. "You're banned from Thanksgiving, idiot." I laughed, a small, brittle sound that turned into a sigh. I didn't know if she'd sent it out of anger, or if Lucas had grabbed her phone again. But either way, the message meant the same thing. I no longer belonged. I set the phone on the table. The apartment was so quiet it felt hollow. In that silence I could hear my heartbeat. Steady, unhurried, unnervingly calm. No phone calls. No one asking me to cover this. No lists of bills to pay. For the first time in years, I felt empty, but clean. I walked to the window. Outside, the night had spread, the lights from nearby apartments glimmering like shards of glass. I wondered how many people in those glowing windows were living lives like mine, always needed, but never remembered. On the table, my tea had gone cold. I picked it up and took a sip. The bitterness spread across my tongue, and somehow it made everything clearer. Now I understood. Unplugging wasn't revenge. It was survival. A way of saying, I don't have to prove my worth by serving anymore. I opened my laptop and looked at the autopay spreadsheet. The empty cells, the columns that had once been chains. I added a final note at the bottom. Stop performing responsibility. Start living. I hit save. A small action, but to me, it felt like laying the first brick of another life. As the screen dimmed, my reflection appeared. Dark circles under my eyes, but calm. Maybe this was what people meant by emotional boundaries. The moment your heart stops trying to convince anyone to change. That night, I didn't cry. I just let the silence settle. Because once you've lived through enough disappointment, loneliness doesn't scare you anymore. It becomes another form of freedom. I looked out the window. A streetlight flickered, its reflection trembling on the glass, like a fragile, stubborn pulse of life. I whispered to no one but myself, "It's okay, Emily. Everything will be all right." Then I turned off my phone and set it face down on the table. In the darkness, the only sound left was my heartbeat. Slow, steady, and no longer afraid. That morning, I woke up to a silence unlike any other. No bank notifications, no mom's voice saying, "Honey, the gas bill's late again." No Lucas asking, "Did you pay it yet?" Only the faint light filtering through the curtains and the smell of bitter coffee rising in slow curls. I sat before my old laptop, staring at the words, auto pay, family accounts, 6 accounts. 6 threads tying me to the people I once called family. My fingers brushed the mouse. The cold plastic sent a shiver through to my fingertips. I knew I was about to do something irreversible. But sometimes, not going back is the only way to survive. 1. Electricity. Mother. I could still hear her voice. Sharp, impatient. "Transfer it now, Emily. They're about to cut the power. I can't stand the heat. I'm exhausted." I once paused an entire work meeting just to send her money. Back then, I thought I was saving my family. Now I see I was only extending my fear of being disliked. I hovered over the button, remove card. Click. A small sound, like a metal wire snapping. The apartment stayed quiet. Inside me, a hollow space opened. Not empty, but a space finally made for breathing. 2. Internet, home Wi-Fi. Lucas once texted at midnight, "Hey, the Wi-Fi's lagging. Probably got shut off. Check it." I jumped out of bed, terrified that if their internet went down, they'd turn on me. Looking back, how absurd. Click. Remove. This time, I didn't ask permission. I didn't explain. The silence that followed sounded like waves retreating from the shore. I imagined the Carter house dimming, their Wi-Fi going dead, and me, finally detoxing from the addiction of being needed. 3. Gas card. Darlene. I hesitated longer. Aunt Darlene, the one who gave me my first box of colored pencils. She once told me, "You've got a gift, sweetheart. Don't grow up like the rest of us, always counting money." But when I did grow up, she was the one who asked me to open a gas card under your name. At first, I thought I was helping family. By the third month, the bill had tripled. I paid without question, afraid of causing tension. I looked at the name Darlene Carter glowing on the screen, exhaled slowly. Click. The metallic sound in my chest echoed again. A small tear, painful but necessary. The colored pencils still sit in my drawer. But that love, I realized, no longer owed me anything. 4. Insurance. Lucas. That name made me pause. My brother. The boy who once lifted me on his shoulders and promised, "Don't worry, sis. I'll protect you." As we grew older, that sentence morphed into, "Hey, can you cover my car insurance?" I forgot. Then, "I'll pay you back." Then, "Come on, it's family." I'd heard those lines for 10 years. Click, remove. The screen flashed. "Are you sure?" I whispered. "I'm sure." For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I just felt grown. 5. Cell phones. Family shared plan. When I first got a job, I opened a shared plan for all of us. Mom, Dad, Lucas, and me. It felt like building a bridge to keep us connected. But they only crossed that bridge when they needed something. They never came back the other way. Each month, I paid over $200, believing that was how you keep a family together. Now I understand. The bridge was built from my fear of loneliness. Click. Remove. No fireworks, no collapse. Just one small sound, then quiet. I sat there, listening to my heartbeat. Soft, steady, like the first rhythm of freedom. 6. Utilities. Carter Residence. The last account. The old note under it read, "Don't let them lose power again." I stared at that line for a long time. It had once been my mantra. Keep everything bright so they wouldn't blame me. I deleted it. Click. Another cord snapped. I closed my eyes. No tears, just the sensation of cleaning out an old room in my soul. I shut the laptop. 6 switches, 6 clicks. 6 times I chose myself over guilt. The room looked the same, but the air felt different. Lighter, cleaner, still. I brewed tea. The warm scent filled the space. I'd never noticed what tea actually tasted like. Before, I drank it while thinking of the next bill. Now, I took a sip, letting the bitterness fade on my tongue. Freedom, I realized, isn't the absence of attachment. It's choosing the ones that bring you peace. I gathered the old bills and stacked them neatly into a cardboard box. On the lid, I wrote in black marker, "For closure, not for guilt." I placed it in the closet corner, then turned on some piano music. The notes floated through the apartment. In that sound, I remembered the 8-year-old girl with the colored pencils. She'd drawn a small house, smoke curling from the chimney, and herself, standing outside the window, smiling. Back then, I didn't understand why she wouldn't step inside. Now I know, she hadn't yet found a reason to return. And I, after all these years, finally had the courage to walk out there with her. I opened my notebook and wrote, "The day I turned off 6 switches, I didn't lose my family. I just stopped funding my own hurt." I set down the pen and leaned back. Sunlight from late afternoon poured through the window, stretching long across the wooden floor. I took a deep breath. No one needed me. No one texted. Nothing to fix. Just me. And a peaceful evening where the only sound was the honest, steady beat of my heart, finally under no one's control. A week after I turned off the 6 switches, life settled into a silence so deep I began to hear the sound of myself. At first, it felt strange. Then, safe. In the mornings, I brewed coffee, opened the window, and let the wind scatter papers across my desk. I no longer saw the old bills. They were packed away in the box labeled "for closure, not for guilt." But without anyone left to take care of, another emptiness appeared. What would I do with the rest of my life, when every reason I'd had for existing used to be about saving someone else? I spent the whole morning scrolling through work files. As a risk analyst, I'd always been precise, orderly, rational. But staring at the spreadsheets, I realized I couldn't focus anymore. Every number turned into a quiet reminder. Who audits your life, Emily? That afternoon, I called the office of Grace Miller, a former colleague I'd met during a training program. Her voice was warm, soft, and edged with a smile. "Emily, long time. You finally need me, huh?" I hesitated, then said, "I need someone to help me review everything, not finances, myself." Grace laughed gently. "Good. Bring it all. The papers, and the things you've been afraid to say out loud." 2 days later, I sat in Grace's small office, the walls covered with charts and planning boards. She poured me tea, then pointed to the thick binder I'd brought. "That's all my data. Accounts, bills, expense logs, the full autopay history," I explained, like I was presenting a project. Grace flipped through the pages slowly, then gave a sad little smile. "Emily, this isn't a financial report. It's a journal of endurance." I froze. "A journal of endurance?" She nodded, her voice low and kind, as if speaking to a patient. "You've documented every payment for others, detailed, careful, down to the cent. But I don't see a single entry for yourself. No spa, no travel, no vacation. You're not just exhausted, Emily. You've been misclassified. You're not a daughter. You're accounts payable." The phrase hit me like the rip of paper. Precise, clean, merciless. She kept writing on a blank sheet of paper, "Legal, technical, communication." I asked, "What's that?" "The 3 columns you'll need to restructure yourself," Grace said. "Legal, to end all financial entanglements. Technical, to relearn independence. Communication, to rediscover your own voice." I let out a small, shaky laugh. "I thought just stopping the payments was enough." Grace shook her head. "No, Emily. That's only the surface. Stopping payments isn't forgiveness. Forgiveness is when you stop treating yourself as their tool. When you start saying, 'I deserve peace,' without apologizing for it." Her words lingered in me for a long time. My eyes stung, and for the first time in months, tears fell, slow, heavy, each drop carrying years of held breath. I grabbed a tissue, embarrassed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to cry." Grace looked at me. "Don't apologize, it means you still feel. Only survivors cry at the right time." Then she handed me another sheet. "From now on, whenever you want to help someone, ask, 'If I don't help, will they find a way?' If the answer is yes, you don't need to save them." I nodded, trying to carve that into memory. But as I stepped outside, the cold wind swept over me. I paused mid-street, thinking of Mom, of Lucas, of the Carter house. None of them had ever asked if I was okay. None had seen that I might need saving too. And suddenly I understood. Grace hadn't just taught me how to audit finances, she'd taught me how to audit loyalty. That night, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I created a new file, selfcareaudit.xlsx, the first column, things I do for myself. I hesitated, then began to type. Go to bed early. Eat a hot meal. Don't respond when they text. Buy myself flowers. Write down what I feel. The list grew longer. Small things, ordinary things, yet to me, each one was a quiet revolution. When I hit save, a tiny heart icon appeared on the title bar. Just a software feature. But I laughed. Maybe the universe was saying, "Good job, Emily." A few days later, Grace emailed me. "Remember, forgiveness starts when you give yourself permission to stop performing." I read it over and over. I had lived my whole life as a performance. The good daughter, the reliable sister, the responsible one. Today, I didn't need a role anymore. I stepped out onto the balcony, gazing down at the city at night. Endless lines of cars, red and gold lights weaving together. I felt my heart beating slowly, steadily. No anxious rush, no urgent calls for help. I placed a hand over my chest and whispered, "Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Emily. Thank you for still being here." Under the streetlight, the tea in my cup steamed gently. The vapor rose and thinned, like the old years finally fading away. For the first time, I wasn't managing, calculating, or enduring. I simply existed. And that, for me, was a kind of rebirth. Thanksgiving morning, the city was still wrapped in mist. Outside my window, the bare trees trembled gently in the wind. I got up slowly. No rush, no emails to check, no shopping lists or transfers to make for anyone. The phone sat silent on the table, no notifications. Part of me feared that silence. Another part was grateful for it. I walked into the kitchen. The fridge was emptier than in previous years. Just a few simple things. A small chicken, a potato, some greens, half a bottle of red wine. I smiled. No need for a massive turkey, no long table with white linens, golden chrysanthemums, or sparkling lights. All I needed was a meal no one could take away from me. I put on soft music. Piano notes drifted through the room, blending with the smell of ginger and garlic as I began to cook. The sound of the knife against the cutting board was steady, unhurried, a rhythm that reminded me I was still alive. Not to serve anyone, but simply to live. When the chicken started to roast, its aroma filled the apartment. I opened the window, letting the cold air in and sending the scent out into the street. The crisp air made me shiver, but it felt good. I'd never made my home smell of food meant only for me. In the Carter house, cooking was always an obligation, proof that I was good enough. Today, it was simply a message to myself. "Emily, you deserve a warm meal." I set the table. A single white plate, polished silverware, a small glass of wine. No need to set 11 places like all the years before. No one to argue over portions, no one yelling, "Lucas, stop hogging the turkey." Just me and the single chair by the window. I sat down, slowly. Before me was a golden roast chicken still steaming. I didn't take a photo, didn't post it, didn't need to prove anything to the world. I just looked, inhaled, tasted the melt of the skin on my tongue. Simple, ordinary, and perfect. When I looked up, the sky was pale gray, light filtering faintly through the glass. I remembered old Thanksgivings, the Carter house always roaring with noise, Mom barking orders from the kitchen, Lucas turning up the football game, Dad in his armchair with a beer, and me, always in the kitchen, ladle in hand, sweat on my forehead, someone shouting, "Emily, don't burn the pie." Every year I told myself, they love me, they just don't know how to say it. Now I understand. They didn't love me because I cooked, but I made them believe that as long as I did, everything would stay okay. I looked at the chicken again. Each slice felt like a quiet goodbye to the past. I didn't hate them. I just let go. When the clock struck 8, I turned off the lights. The apartment sank into darkness except for a single candle flickering on the table. Outside, rain began to fall softly. Droplets hit the glass, mingling with the faint jazz I'd put on. I leaned back in my chair, listening to the rain. No voices, no chaos. Yet I felt full in my chest, in my breath, in the knowledge that I no longer needed to do anything to be loved. I sipped the wine. The bitterness on my tongue made me alert. I checked my phone. No message from Mom. No happy Thanksgiving from Lucas. Just one email. From Grace. Subject: How's your quiet dinner? Inside, only one line. Silence is not the absence of love. It's where love finally learns to breathe. I read it over and over. Tears came without warning, not out of sadness, but because, for the first time, someone spoke to me in a language that asked for nothing. I typed back, "It's quiet, but it feels like peace." Sent. I set the phone down. The rain grew heavier. Water and breath filled the room's quiet rhythm. I stood and poured more tea. The scent of hot ginger spread through the air. On the shelf, the old family photo still sat in its frame. Me, Lucas, Mom, Dad, all smiling. I picked it up, staring at it for a long time. In the photo, I was smiling the widest, but my eyes were empty. I touched the cold glass and whispered, "I forgive you." Then I set the frame face down, so the back faced outward. I didn't want to erase them. I just wanted them to stay where they belonged, behind me, not in front. Around 9, the lights flickered, candlelight casting long shadows on the wall. I smiled faintly. In the past, I'd have panicked, checked the system, terrified of a missed payment. Now, I simply watched the flame sway, felt its warmth. Not everything needs fixing. Some things just need to be left alone, like me, right now. I sat on the floor, back against the wall. No grand celebration, no clinking glasses, no loud toasts. But in this small room, there was something I hadn't had in years. Peace that didn't come on loan. I closed my eyes and let my breathing slow. I heard the rain, the wind, the steady beat of my heart. Each sound whispered the same truth. I'm still here, and that's enough. I lit another candle. Its glow joined the first, soft, gold, like a breath. I thought of Grace, and the words she once said, of how I'd spent years performing strength when all I'd needed was permission to be fragile. Now I don't perform anymore. I'm not the good daughter, not the rescuer, not the responsible sister. I'm just Emily, a woman learning how to dine, to comfort, and to love herself. I whispered softly, "It's okay, Emily. You're home." And on that quiet Thanksgiving night, I realized I don't need to be seen to know I exist. I don't need to be forgiven to feel free. All I need is to sit here, breathe deeply, and live, truthfully, and enough. Friday morning. The city was still half asleep when I sat up, light seeping through the curtains, glancing off the table where my phone buzzed. 23 missed calls, 14 unread messages, all from Mom, Lucas, Homeline. I looked at them for a few seconds, then set the phone face down. It kept ringing, but I no longer jumped to fix things. I just exhaled. Long and steady. Today, I owed no one anything. I opened my laptop. The familiar credit monitoring dashboard appeared, the kind of system that once made me feel safe. As a risk analyst, I trusted data. Numbers don't lie. But that morning, they betrayed me. In the middle of the expense log, one strange line appeared. CycleWorks Auto Parts, 612 RO4s. I frowned. I didn't own a car. I'd never been there. Below it read, "Payment confirmed, Emily Carter." And beneath that, an email, emilycarter.backupeggmail.com. I froze. I'd never created that address. A chill ran down my spine. I pulled up more reports, scanning the transactions. A new credit card account, opened 3 months ago, under my name. When I downloaded the e-signature file, I saw the slanted, careful loop of the letter E. I didn't need to look twice. I knew that handwriting. Mom. The room went frighteningly quiet. I could hear my heartbeat in my chest. Scrolling further, I found a secondary name listed. Authorized user, Lucas Carter. I let go of the keyboard, leaning back in the chair. Everything became brutally clear. I hadn't just paid for their comfort, I had become their asset. Something to use, to sign, to spend. I opened the transaction file. Dozens of entries appeared. Auto parts, game tickets, electronics. I hit print. The paper rolled out, one page after another, dry and mechanical. 10 sheets, 20, 30. Each one a receipt of how they'd turned me into the stamp that sealed their lives together. I stared at the pile for a long time. No tears, no shouting. Just the slow death of one illusion. The belief that they were careless, not cruel. The phone rang again. I let it ring until it stopped. A few minutes later, a message appeared. Emily, we need to talk. Don't blow this out of proportion. It's not what you think. I read it 3 times. Not what you think. That was the master key they'd always used, to unlock every wrongdoing, to escape every truth. I opened a new browser tab. Typed, FTC, Identity Theft Report. The website loaded, rows of blank fields waiting. I began filling them in. Full name, Emily Carter, perpetrators, immediate family members. Description, credit card opened without consent, forged email and signature. My hands trembled, but I kept typing. Each word, each period was a blade cutting away the person I used to be. Then I clicked submit. A soft chime sounded. Your report has been successfully filed. I stared at the line for a long time, then whispered, it's done. No sense of victory, only emptiness. But in that emptiness, something was forming. Small, quiet, but solid. By noon, Grace called. Her voice was calm, but warm. You really filed it? Yes. How does it feel? I paused, then said, like removing shackles. But the iron still leaves marks. Grace laughed softly. Time will fade them. But remember, Emily, justice doesn't take sides. It only takes truth. I smiled faintly. Ironic, isn't it? I used to teach others how to detect fraud, and I missed the one inside my own family. Grace's tone shifted, firm but gentle. You didn't miss it. You just kept believing love could make them honest, but you can't rescue people who are comfortable in the dark. I said nothing. That sentence landed deep, echoing in every hidden place inside me. Later that afternoon, I went to the post office. In my hands, a thick envelope of evidence, receipts, forged signatures, a printed copy of the report. The clerk asked, "What's inside?" I answered quietly, "A copy of the truth." I sealed it, stamped it, and watched the mailbox swallow it whole. Cold wind brushed against my hair. On the walk home, I didn't feel regret. I felt lighter. That evening, my inbox pinged. Your identity theft case has been successfully recorded by the FTC. I laughed. Not from joy, but because the words felt like a birth certificate for a new version of me. I opened my notebook and wrote, I am no longer their daughter. I am the witness to the truth they tried to bury. I set down the pen and closed the notebook. The desk lamp reflected my face in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't tired anymore. She was steady, awake, unflinching. Late at night, another message arrived. Emily, this is wrong. Families don't take each other to court. I read it, then typed back slowly. Real families don't need a courtroom to learn honesty. Send. Then I turned off the phone. No waiting. No fear. Because I knew this time I'd chosen the right side, even if it meant standing there alone. I brewed tea. The kettle's hum filled the silence, soft as a heartbeat. I sipped it. warmth spreading through me. Outside, the city lights flickered in the fog. I leaned my head against the window, seeing my reflection, tired, but real. No longer hiding behind the dependable one, the good daughter, the sister who fixes everything. I whispered to that reflection, I didn't destroy this family. I just stopped funding its lies. The curtain shifted with a gentle gust of wind. The air was cold, but I wasn't. Inside me, something warm was growing, the heat of truth, of self-respect, and of a woman who had finally stopped being the victim. Sunday. The sky was heavy and gray, rain falling softly since morning. I sat in my chair, staring at the two binders laid neatly on the table, one gray, one black. On their labels I had written, Binder 1, Evidence. Binder 2, A Guide for Grown-Ups. I knew exactly where they were going. I hadn't prepared a speech. I hadn't rehearsed what to say. There was no need. Every forged signature, every fake email, every receipt already spoke for itself. I was only bringing them back to where they were born, the Carter house. The road there was wet, the air thick with the smell of damp leaves. The front door was ajar, and when I pushed it open, the hinges groaned softly. The living room was the same. The old armchair, the crooked family photo, the faint reek of cheap air freshener fighting the mold. I heard the TV from the kitchen, Mom calling to someone, then the sound of footsteps. Lucas appeared. "Oh, you actually came?" he said, half sarcastic, half surprised. I answered quietly, "You should call everyone in. I have something to say." They gathered around the dining table, Mom, Dad, and Lucas. I placed the two binders in front of them. My face calm, though my heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. For a few seconds, no one spoke. I opened binder 1, flipping to the first page, a copy of the credit card form. Mom's voice trembled as she asked, "What's this?" "A credit card opened under my name," I replied. "Signed by you, with Lucas as the authorized user." Lucas shot up from his chair. "Oh my God, you're seriously making a scene over that? It's not a big deal. I'll pay you back." I looked up at him, my voice even. "Pay me back with money? Or with trust?" He fell silent. Mom jumped in, her voice shaking. "Emily, we're family. Don't make this a war between strangers." "You made it one first," I said softly. "The day you signed my name on a lie." The room froze. The TV in the other room carried on. An ad for a bank, cruelly ironic. Dad, Robert, who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke. "Enough, Emily. Everyone just wants things to calm down." I looked at him, fighting back tears. "I used to want calm too, Dad. That's why I paid every bill, swallowed every hurt. But do you know what I learned? That peace only existed because I carried it." Mom slammed her hand on the table. "Stop playing the victim. We could survive just fine without you." I let out a bitter laugh. "Really? Then why are you still using my name to live?" Lucas snapped, voice breaking with anger. "You think you're so perfect. You love controlling people. You like being needed." I looked at him, and suddenly I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. "You're wrong, Lucas. I never liked being needed. I was just scared that if I let go, this family would collapse. But now, I'm letting it." Mom began to cry. Dad lowered his head, his hands trembling. I pulled out more pages, invoices, email screenshots, copies of the forged signature. My voice was steady now. "You said I was overreacting, but this isn't a mistake. It's a crime. I've already filed with the Federal Trade Commission, and if needed, I'll submit more evidence." Mom looked up, tears streaking her face. "You want to destroy this family?" I met her eyes, then shook my head. No, Mom, I'm not destroying it. I'm just refusing to keep it alive with my money. Silence detonated across the room. No one breathed. Only the ticking clock moved, each second measuring the death of something unseen. Trust. Lucas shoved his chair back, shouting hoarsely, "You're insane! You're stabbing your own blood in the back!" I smiled faintly. "If we share the same blood, why did you drain mine without asking?" He stepped back, face flushed, unable to meet my eyes. Mom stood, rushing toward me, grabbing my hand through her tears. "Emily, please, I was wrong. But we're still family. Don't drag this out." I gently freed my hand. "I used to be your daughter, Mom. But today, I'm a survivor. And survivors tell the truth." I turned to Dad. He still sat motionless, staring down at the table. My throat tightened. "Dad, I just need to know one thing. Was I ever your daughter? Or just the emergency fund of this family?" He looked up. His eyes were dull, his lips trembling. But no words came. Only silence. The cruelest answer of all. I nodded once, then closed Binder 1 and slid it toward them. I kept Binder 2, resting my hand on its cover. "This one's for me. It's called A Guide for Grown-Ups. I think someone in this house should learn how to become one." I turned to leave. Mom called after me, "Emily." I stopped, but didn't look back. My voice was barely above a whisper. "I forgive you, but I'm not coming back." I stepped out the door. The rain had grown heavier, pounding against the roof. The sky was a dull gray, cold seeping into my sleeves. I walked down the wet road, the same one I'd biked home on as a child. Now I was leaving it for good, stepping away from a past that no longer belonged to me. In my hands, the black binder weighed heavy, but inside me, something lifted. They would never see it, but I had just saved them by letting the truth live. That night, back in my apartment, my phone lit up. One message. From Dad. "The utility site is asking for a payment method. What should I do?" I smiled faintly and typed back, "Use your own card." I set the phone down, poured myself some tea, and watched the steam curl upward. Through the haze, my reflection shimmered. Calm, unburdened, free. No longer the daughter of the Carter family, just Emily. And for the first time, that was enough. Monday morning, no alarm clock, no buzzing messages, no more, "Emily, did you check that for me yet?" Just pale light slipping through the curtains and the sound of water boiling in the electric kettle. I poured the tea, steam rising like mist, curling into each breath. The apartment was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking, one small heartbeat at a time. The phone lit up. One message from Dad. "I'm on the utility website. It's asking for a payment method. What should I do?" I stared at the words, feeling something between pity and relief. A part of me wanted to type paragraphs, instructions, help, maybe even an apology. The same part that had done everything for everyone for years. But another part, the one that had finally had enough, the one that had woken up, quietly typed 3 words, "Use your own card." I sent it. 3 words, light as air, yet they felt like the final unplugging of my life. Outside, early winter wind slipped through the cracks, carrying the damp scent of last night's rain. I stood at the window, watching the first rays of sunlight fall across the roofs opposite mine. Everything looked the same, yet inside me, something had shifted. I imagined the Carter house, flickering lights, the fridge humming into silence, the heater dying out. In that dimness, they were probably panicking, calling the company, blaming each other, calling me. But I wasn't the responsible one anymore. I wasn't the wire keeping that system alive. I exhaled softly, my shoulders lighter than they had been in years. The sound I once feared, silence, had become the background music of freedom. By noon, I met Grace at the little cafe by the street corner. She was the same as ever. Gray coat, quiet smile, eyes that knew how to listen. She looked at me and said immediately, "I heard the Carters lost power." I smiled faintly. "Yeah? I'm guessing they think I did it." Grace took a sip of her coffee. "You didn't cut their power, Emily. You just stopped being the source." Her words made me laugh and cry at the same time. I wiped my eyes quickly. I don't know why it still hurts. I thought letting go would feel lighter. Grace nodded. "It's supposed to hurt. That's what it feels like when the rope finally leaves your skin. But remember, you didn't do something cruel. You just stopped doing harm to yourself." We sat in silence for a while, rain tapping softly against the glass, a spoon stirring in her cup. Then I asked, almost whispering, "Grace, was I too harsh?" She looked at me with gentle eyes. "No, Emily. Harsh is when you keep letting them walk over you and call it love." That afternoon, the rain cleared. I walked home slowly, the wet street reflecting the streetlights. I stopped by the small grocery store, bought a few simple things, a box of chamomile tea, some bread, and a little plant labeled Peace Lily. At the checkout, the cashier smiled. "Nice day, huh?" I smiled back. "Yeah, for the first time in a long while." I carried the plant home and set it by the window. The afternoon light fell across its glossy green leaves, droplets still clinging to them. I touched one, cool, damp, alive, and whispered, "From now on, this is all I'll take care of." Evening. The apartment glowed softly. I made a small dinner: pumpkin soup, toasted bread, a cup of warm tea. No one to feed, no one waiting. I played the old jazz track Grace once sent me, a gentle melody that didn't fill the silence, only honored it. After eating, I washed the dishes, wiped the counter, then opened my journal. The first page read, Day 1, the Carter house lost power. The second, Day 1. Emily turned on her own light. I smiled. Maybe this was what happiness looked like. Not fireworks, not applause, just a quiet evening scented with tea and calm. Around 9, the phone lit up again. A message from Mom. "Emily, can you turn the power back on? Your dad and I don't know what to do. It's so cold." I read it a few times, then typed back, "I didn't turn it off. I just stopped paying. You can call the company and set up your own card." Sent. 10 minutes later, another message. From Lucas. "You win. Happy now?" I stared at the words for a while, then smiled faintly. They still thought this was a war, that someone had to win and someone had to lose. But how could I win when I'd already lost everything? I typed back, "Not winning, surviving." Night fell. Outside, the wind whispered through the cracks, soft and rhythmic. I sat in the dark, leaving only the desk lamp on. The kettle clicked off. That tiny sound, steady and final. Once that click meant I should hurry. Pour for someone, serve, keep the roll alive. Tonight it was just for me. One cup, one person, one breath. I lifted the cup, inhaling the gentle steam. In that warmth, I realized my revenge was never that they lost power. It was that I finally found my own switch. I opened the journal again and wrote my last line for the day. My kettle clicked off again. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was peace. I set the pen down and closed my eyes. No images of the old house, no echoes of Mom's yelling, Lucas's sneer, Dad's silence, only my own breathing, soft, steady, enough. I understood then. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering without trembling, and I was finally there. Outside, the city lights shimmered through the rain-streaked window. Beside me, the peace lily stood still, its shadow swaying gently in the golden lamplight. I whispered, almost to life itself, I'm finally home. Not the Carter house, not the place of bills, demands, or empty chairs, but a small apartment with a woman who has finally learned how to live without permission, without guilt, and without apology. Spring came late that year, as if the world itself were hesitating before handing me a new beginning. On the quiet mornings of March, sunlight streamed through the window of my small apartment, falling over the peace lily I'd bought the month before. It had bloomed, a single white flower, pure and weightless. I stared at it for a long time and wondered, perhaps flowers, too, understand what freedom feels like. My apartment wasn't special. An old wooden table, a small bookshelf, a few photos from the days I began again. But it had something I once didn't dare to dream of: peace that didn't demand a price. On the table, my laptop glowed with a new email from the bank. Your dispute case has been resolved. Fraudulent accounts have been permanently closed. I read the line 3 times, my fingertip resting on the screen. No more debts in my name. No one could ever use my signature for themselves again. And for the first time, I truly felt free. I spent the morning writing a New Year's plan. Learn to cook for fun, not for someone. Take a solo trip at least once. Finish the books I once abandoned. The sentences were small, but for me, they were a map to a real life. Then the doorbell rang. Grace stood there with her familiar smile and a bouquet of yellow tulips in hand. I brought spring to you, she said. I laughed, taking the flowers. I thought spring was already here. Not yet, she winked. It only arrives when you're calm enough to notice it. Her words stayed with me. I invited her in and poured tea. We sat by the window where sunlight spilled across the table. Grace looked around and smiled. This place feels so different from the first time I came. It's the same, I said, only I'm different. You've learned to live with your own silence, haven't you? I nodded. Now I know, I said. Silence isn't frightening. It's space. The place where I can finally hear myself. For a while we sat quietly, the sound of a teacup touching the table filling the pause. Then Grace asked, "Do you ever think about talking to them again?" I looked out the window where the trees were swaying gently in the wind. I used to, I said. But I've realized forgiveness doesn't always need to be delivered. Sometimes it only needs to rest in your heart, soft as a prayer. That evening we cooked together. A simple dinner of mushroom soup, toasted bread, and white wine. I didn't feel the pressure to do it right or please anyone. I cooked because I wanted to. Somewhere between laughter and conversation, I noticed it was the first time in years I'd eaten dinner without fear. Afterward, we stepped out onto the balcony. The spring air played gently through our hair, the sky still holding a faint glow. Grace leaned on the railing and asked, "Do you have any plans next?" "I want to visit the old house," I said. "Not to see them, just to look. One last time." "Are you sure?" I think I need to close it properly." 3 days later, I drove back to the suburbs, to the Carter house, still standing like a block of memory that refused to fade. The narrow road leading there was damp and green with moss. The old iron gate creaked the same way it always had. Inside, the house was empty. Windows sealed, a paper notice taped to the glass, pending utilities. I didn't go in. I just stood on the porch, staring at the door that once opened to welcome me home. In my mind, I could still hear it all. Mom's shouting, Dad's sighs, Lucas's mocking laughter. But they sounded far away now, as if from another world. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel anger. Just a quiet compassion, not for them, but for the girl I once was, the one who tried so hard to keep this house from falling apart. I placed the bouquet of yellow tulips on the steps and whispered, "I forgive you." There was no answer. The spring wind carried the scent of flowers into the air. I turned away. Behind me, the house remained, silent, still, but stripped of its power to define me. That night, back in my apartment, the peace lily filled the air with its faint fragrance. I opened a drawer and took out an unsent Christmas card, white, its corners slightly bent. Inside were only the words, "I'm okay. I hope you are too." I read it once more and smiled. Once, I'd written those words through tears. Now, I read them in peace. I folded the card, placed it back in the drawer. It didn't need to be sent. Forgiveness was a private ritual, not a public announcement. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Forgiveness doesn't mean they're innocent. It means I choose to stop carrying the sentence." I couldn't save them, but I saved the part of me that still believes love doesn't have to hurt. I stopped writing, inhaled deeply. The curtain swayed gently, bringing in the scent of grass and rain. In that moment, I realized everything I'd feared had dissolved, and everything I'd lost was quietly returning, in a different shape. A week later, I started writing again. Not reports, not apology emails. A story about a woman who learned to unplug herself from the past so she could finally turn on her own light. I wrote with a smile, with memory, with tears long dried. I didn't know if anyone would ever read it, but I knew I was writing to live, not to be forgiven. Late that night, I stopped to make tea and stepped onto the balcony. The spring sky was clear, the moonlight spilling across the table. I looked into the cup and whispered to myself, and to the girl I used to be, "We made it, Emily." The words slipped out like a breath, warm enough to fill my chest. I didn't owe anyone. I didn't resent anyone. All I had left was a life, and for the first time, it was mine. Not every act of revenge needs blood or tears. Some take place in silence, when we choose to walk away and live better. Emily Carter didn't bring anyone to their knees. She simply taught herself to stand. Because sometimes the most profound revenge is to become the person they never imagined you could be. Free, at peace, and owing nothing. And what about you? If one day the people you love most turned you into their personal credit card, would you keep paying or dare to press remove card? Share your thoughts below, not to argue, but to remind one another that somewhere out there are people still learning how to love themselves, just as Emily did.